Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
Please give a warm round of applause for the Howard University Bison Battalion and Maya Rose Payton for a wonderful opening to this morning's National Town Hall. Please welcome to the stage the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the U.S. representative from the state of Texas, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Whoa. That is an exclamation point. Good morning, everyone. Oh, I want to hear some shouting out there. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank the Howard University and Maya. Weren't they outstanding? I can't hear you. Let's give them a very big hand. I am very proud of you. As they say, when we walk through the storm, you have battled the storm. You have made it here. We have come this far by faith. And I welcome you to the 48th Annual Legislative Conference of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. You are welcome. You may be seated. This is our national town hall meeting. It is our signature moment to engage the nation in an important discussion. And in this instance, it is a discussion of freedom and justice. Oh yes, we have heard these words before, and generations have marched and fought, and here we are with millennials who ask the question, why? And I'll be reminded of a gentleman who 50 years ago was running for president and lost his life. Robert Francis Kennedy said, when those ask me why, I say why not. And so today is a calling for why not, and to be able to address the emerging leadership of the African American woman. For today's topic, advancing the cause of freedom, justice, and equality, black women at the forefront of leadership. This is, of course, a call to action. It is recognizing that we stand shoulder to shoulder to men, to children, to our families, to those who are emerging, but it is a call to action, and it is a conspicuous acknowledgement that as we drive toward a nation of justice in the 21st century, women have been standing, have been walking, have been fighting, have been leading, and we're ready for them to surge right now. I need not tell you where we are today. I know you woke up this morning and recognized that you were in Washington, D.C., the most powerful city in the world, as the capital of what has been called the most powerful nation in the world. With power comes duty and obligation. It comes a responsibility. And we recognize that there is a dangerous undercurrent in this nation, which some would like to roll back progress. Although we had made it very far, we had made some progress. Rolling back those progress and the rights and opportunities of other marginalized populations. Even to use that word, I want to step back from the podium and ask the question, should there be anyone who feels less bright in the nation that has a sunshine of justice and built on the pillars of equality? These ideas are derived from fear and ignorance and the short-sighted notion that prosperity for one group must be achieved and maintained over another. There are so many of us who have come so many different ways. Some in a fishing boat, some walked across the border, and many came in a slave boat some many years ago. Our brothers and sisters who came in Pilgrim's Pride, we should all be equal no matter who we are. So I'm here to tell you that we as a people, the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, are not going backwards. We are surging to the front, and we're surging on behalf of justice and for everyone. We can build a society. We can do better and be better than this. We can build a society that helps us all. We can build a society that every child that sits in a classroom outside of these doors feels a sense of pride and opportunity and knows that they can be that astronaut, or they can be that academic genius, or they can be that important entrepreneur, or engineer, or member of Congress, or president of the United States, or teacher. They can be that person of humanity and caring. As African Americans, we take a great pride in moral leadership, and we need to do it at this critical point. And each and every one of you are a vital part and pivotal role in the leadership. The moral compass stops with you. We must be the justice carriers wherever we are. During the Civil Rights Movement, for example, we had a peaceful movement that forced the nation to begin to look at itself. Now, not only must we push back against assaults on our rights, and frankly, that happens almost daily, but we must be activists. And activism, as I said in a session yesterday called Power Now, I heard millennials talk about social media, and I'm not here to in any way cast any challenge to that. I think it's powerful and important and a new part of the social justice movement. But as you do that, be an activist, move from that social media arena, go out to a classroom, because you are a role model for that first grader and fifth grader and middle schooler and high school. Let's carry them with us. Let's carry them on the march for freedom. I'm pleased and delighted that we have such wonderful panelists this morning that will capture the very essence of what I have said to you this morning. It's good to have corporate America that has a social agenda that understands the empowerment of all people. And so it is my privilege to thank Procter & Gamble for its generous support and for its commitment to diversity, inclusion, and positive community impact. Would you give Procter & Gamble a very big hand? And I always want to thank our media sponsor, totally owned by African Americans that you may not know, and that is Essence Magazine. Give them a very big hand. So there are many movements, and they may be in this room, from the Underground Railroad to the Black Lives Matter, to Me Too, and many others. We are all one people. Remember what I said, we can do better than this. And we're witnessing now the great leadership of black women in so many different roles, as I said, from boardrooms to elected positions, and we're delighted that our panel is going to represent so many of them, such as Stacey Abrams, the candidate for governor from Georgia, Tarana Burke, founder of the Me Too movement, and recently, Ayanna Pressley, who has just won a primary in Massachusetts. There are plenty other names that I can call out, but I will say to you that the names that we should be calling out are yours. Are yours. Is your name written there? In the Iraq War, there were some of us who said, not in my name. But today I say, in my name, for justice and freedom in a nation that we will carry forward. And this town hall meeting that stands on the shoulders of African American women, including my dear friend who you will hear from, this powerful woman, Sabrina Fulton, who is a mother, and a mother of a son that did not need to die, Trayvon Martin. I hope that you will welcome her when she comes. So ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this is an important moment, and I'm so delighted to have history in the making. As you witness history, as we introduce to you our two very special co-chairs in their own right, dynamic senators from the state of New Jersey and the state of California, but they can't help it. Every step they make is history because they are the first African American senators in the United States Congress, in the Congress together, and the second woman in the Congress together. And they are our co-chairs for the 48th Annual Legislative Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome the freedom fighters and those who represent their constituents and America, the Honorable Senator Cory Booker and the Honorable Senator Kamala Harris.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, look, I don't know about you all, but in this day and age, I really miss Obama. Hold on. And I miss her husband, too.
There you go.
Kamala, we're here to talk about the power, the import, the history, the strength of American black women. And you, I have to say, right now, are one of the great trailblazing women of our times. Would you give it applause for Kamala Harris, the second African American woman ever to serve in the United States Senate?
Thank you. No, Cory, you know, it has been such a dream for us to be able to serve at the same time. You know, there had not been an African American member of the Senate Judiciary Committee for, I think, 16 years, a very long time. And then look what happened. Down these two little chocolate chips dropped. And we've been on that committee together, really talking about everything that caused you and I to go to law school in the first place. It's been about a fight for justice. But I will say that when it comes to trailblazing, and so many of the people here know this, so many of us have been first to do many things. And I will offer a piece of advice my mother gave me a long time ago. And she said, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things. Make sure you are not the last.
Amen. Amen.
And that's what this conference is about as much as anything else, right?
And the great thing about Senator Harris and I is we have these conversations all the time. We know where we came from. We know we stand on the backs of the shoulders of giants. When I was a mayor of the city of Newark, my mom and Fisk University invited me down to be a commencement speaker, and I was really proud of this moment, feeling great. But I remember sitting down at the head table, and my mother comes over and starts shoving me. She says, "Get up from that seat, boy." And you know you're never so old that your mama can't talk to you that way. And she starts pulling me out of my seat, and I'm like, Mom, I'm the mayor. Stop it. But then she starts bringing me from table to table and says, "You need to meet this person." She led our voter registration drives when we were there. We need to meet this person. She led our sit-in movements. It was almost like she was saying, "Pay attention, boy." There are so many strong women who have been fighting in the fields, in the vineyards, in the streets, in the communities for so many decades. You need to understand upon whose shoulders you stand. That's right. And as Senator Harris and I know, the work that is still yet to be done. We still live in a nation where black women make 63 cents for what a white man does. We still live in a nation where the black maternal mortality rate is almost twice what it is for white women. We still live in a nation where we are, as a community, as African Americans in general, are facing wealth disparities that are as great as they've never been greater since the 1970s. And so understanding that work that we still have to do, Senator Harris and I are committed to the fight, but more importantly, we know we do not stand alone.
That's right. And on that point, many of us have been in situations where we're the only one like us in a room. And that could be a boardroom, it could be a courtroom, it could be just in any kind of meeting. And one of the things that I really want to urge everyone to take away from this week in this conference is to, one, look around and always remember there are a lot of us. And we are with you in those rooms when it may appear that you're the only one like you there. And so part of the takeaway from this week is to remember that when we're in those rooms, we're representing so many voices who support us sitting in those rooms and speaking up and speaking truth. And on the point of speaking truth, this is an inflection moment in the history of our country. We are facing challenges like we have not in a long time. It reminds me of the moment in time when my parents met when they were active in the 60s in the civil rights movement. And it's a moment in time where there are a lot of people feeling, understandably, a great deal of distrust. Distrust in their government, in its institutions, and its leaders. And so this is a moment where we have to deal with that distrust. We understand it, we know it, and we have to build on the trust that needs to be built to make this a better country. And part of that means dealing with the fact that in any relationship of trust, it's a reciprocal relationship. You give and you receive trust. And one of the most important ingredients in a relationship of trust is truth. But it's a funny thing about truth. Speaking truth can often make people quite uncomfortable. Speaking the truths that Senator Booker just spoke about the disparities as it relates to black women in America can often make people quite uncomfortable. But the other thing about speaking truth is this. Yes, people may walk away from the conversation thinking, I didn't particularly like what I had to hear. But they'll also walk away from that conversation respecting that it was an honest conversation. And so part of the takeaway from this week is let us continue speaking our truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes people feel. Because without speaking those truths, we will not get to a point of all people trusting in who we are as a country and knowing that they are being seen and being heard. So I'm just so pleased about everything that we're doing together, Corey.
Amen. Amen. And so in the spirit of Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, of Ella Baker and Dorothy Cotton, in the spirit of the great black women, let us enjoy this town hall meeting. You are going to see present-day heroes up here, but remember, every one of us is not just a hero, but has an obligation not to pay back the blessings that we have from the past, but to pay them forward in sweat, in service, and in work. May God bless everyone. Thank you.
All right.
You can do better than that. Does that look like a dynamic pair for justice? I could not leave the microphone without acknowledging my very important members of Congress. We are in session, and that means that we are here and on the Hill. So first of all, let me acknowledge Chairman Cedric Richmond of the Congressional Black Caucus, who is detained on the Hill doing legislative business, and I think you understand that we are not in the majority. But I am delighted that we have such new energy in the Congressional Black Caucus. And my dear friend, and it's interesting that we're on 2 committees together, and she brings the most powerful insight on criminal justice to our Congress. And so please give an applause for Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida. And then a man who may be headed down to South Carolina. I know that this former lieutenant colonel in the military and former lieutenant governor of Maryland headed to Houston last year with me in the midst of Hurricane Harvey, and he was one of the best rescuers that I'd ever seen. Member of Congress from Maryland, the distinguished Anthony Brown. And then, of course, we have board members. Do we have any other board members? I know Dr. Keith McGee is here, board members of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Any of our other board members here? Any members of the CBC here? You'll be seeing them throughout the day, and thank you to all the Texans out there. I see Mr. Womack, but I don't know if there are any others. You know, there's Texas in the house. And all over America, we thank you. It gives me a great privilege now to introduce our president and CEO of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, doing a dynamic job. Let us thank A. Shanice Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here and join with my colleagues in welcoming you to our 48th Annual Legislative Conference. And I am so energized when I look out in the audience and see all these beautiful Black people and young people in particular. Give yourselves a round of applause. You've heard from our dynamic senators, Booker and Harris, as well as our dynamic chairwoman, and I want to focus my comments directed specifically towards our young people, especially in this social and political climate. You know, it may often feel, for those, I'll date myself, not others, but sometimes it feels like we're a little less optimistic and hopeful about the future and idealistic about our democracy. But our young people, and I'm so proud, I'm going to ask you all to stand. There's a kind of a glare from the lights here, but we have 250 students with us this morning. And as I call their schools, I want them to stand because you represent our future, and I'm so excited that you're here to be a part of this engaging dialogue today. Eleanor Holmes Norton Academy of Law and Public Policy at Dunbar High School. Let's give them some love, guys. Roosevelt High School. Liberty's Promise Youth Organization. P-Tech students from Baltimore Public Schools with Johns Hopkins University of Medicine, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, and the University of California, Washington Center. No, stand, stay standing, stay standing. Thank you all, thank you so much. And Dr. Harry, I have to acknowledge you too. Thank you so much for helping to make their presence possible. And I can imagine that some of you young people may feel like you have all this fire building up inside of you, and you're not quite sure where and how to direct it. Well, this is one of those perfect moments to bring the energy, optimism, and idealism of youth to meet the experience and wisdom of the elders. There is nothing we would like more than to pass the torch to the next generation of foot soldiers, national leaders, and global icons. This is the major focus of our work at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and our mission is to advance the global Black community by developing leaders, informing policy, and educate the public. We are constantly working to build and grow our pipeline of transformative young leaders, thought leaders, policymakers, and innovators. And we accomplish this through our fellowship, internship, scholarship, and study abroad programs, all of which provide access to the halls of Congress, private sector companies, as well as other global models of innovation. It is about creating access and preparing the next generation to boldly lead once they get through the door and if you don't get, take. If you don't get and take it, then make a seat at the table, okay? Get it, take it, or make it. Since our founding, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation has placed thousands of interns, hundreds of public policy fellows, and we have dispersed tens of millions of dollars in scholarship funds. And it is now my pleasure, and I'm extremely proud, I get to do this every year as part of this event, to introduce you to our newest cohort, the 2018-2019 cohort of Congressional Black Caucus Fellows. Ms. Frances Adiel, who's a finance fellow with Congressman Emanuel Cleaver's office. Mr. William A. Bishop III, Science and Tech Fellow with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Ms. Chloe Brown, BP Energy Fellow, Congressman Cedric Richmond. Mr. Christopher Cox, Diversity and Technology Fellow, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. Ms. Malika Daniels, STEM Fellow, Congressman David Scott. Mr. Kevin Fashola, Foreign Policy Fellow, Congressman Gregory Meeks. Ms. Crystal Dolores Malam, Facebook STEM Fellow, Congressman Alcee Hastings. Evan Mitchell, Women in Health Sciences Fellow, Congressman Sanford Bishop. Camille Moore, API Energy Fellow, Congressman Anthony Brown. And finally, Ms. Taylor Ware, Congressional Fellow, Congresswoman Alma Adams. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Thank you. And if you, among our young people and any who might be interested, not only in our fellowship, but as well as the other programs that I mentioned, please visit us at cbcfinc.org. And go to our Leadership Institute, because we have a host of opportunities for young people, and you too could be up on the stage in one of the upcoming years. And I'm also here to ask for your support. You know, as exciting as it is to introduce these 10 dynamic individuals, as well as the young people in the audience, we could not do it without the generous support of so many of our sponsors, donors, and individuals who make contributions and also make it possible for us to undertake this programming. So right now, if you're inclined, you can text CBCF to 56512. Text CBCF to 56512 in order to make a donation of any amount. And there's also another way that you can contribute that will saves you money, and it's Uber. Uber is one of our partners and supporters during the annual legislative conference, and they are offering a 10% discount to any user who uses CBCF ALC 2018. That's CBCF ALC 2018 discount code. And each time you take Uber using that discount code, they will make a $3 donation to the CBCF. I believe Before you leave, I promise there'll be the discount code on the screen, okay? But it's the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, ALC 2018. So in closing, let me leave you with a reminder that I heard from a Florida gubernatorial candidate the other day, and it connects to our theme, which is the dream still demands. He quoted Frederick Douglass, an ancestor who at that time was as bold and courageous as any modern revolutionary. He said, "Power concedes nothing without demand." Power concedes nothing without demand. Do not hesitate to demand what you know is right and what is for the greater good. You saw two very clear and poignant examples of that on this stage with Senators Booker and Harris this morning. And if you all aren't following what's going on with regards to the hearings, just tune in, see policy in action. And certainly it was an opportunity to see Senator Booker do exactly what I just said, and that is doing what is right and what is for the greater good when he released those documents. So living witness, and make sure you are preparing yourselves to receive exactly what you demanded. And with that, it is my pleasure to ask you to join me and please welcome me to the stage the current presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, Bishop Michael Curry.
I do want to thank the chairs and co-chairs of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the caucus and members of the caucus, and excuse me, and thank you. I am bringing welcoming remarks, and so this is not a sermon. But if it was a sermon, I would have a text from Exodus, but it's not a sermon, I want to be clear. But if it was a sermon, I would take a text from Exodus, the second book of the Bible, where the Hebrew writer introduces the story that leads to Moses, the liberator, with these simple words. Now there arose a king in Egypt who knew not Joseph. There arose a king, or a pharaoh as they called them in Egypt, who knew not Joseph. Now this isn't a sermon, these are welcoming remarks. But if it was a sermon, I might mention the fact that Joseph in the Bible was the one who was a dreamer. Joseph not only had a dream, but as the story unfolds, the dream had him. And that dream was not really Joseph's, it was actually God's. And that dream eventually led Joseph and his family to leave the Middle East and to settle in Africa's Egypt. They settled in Africa's Egypt, fleeing famine in their homeland. And Joseph became prominent. The pharaohs of Egypt had an affirmative action program. The Pharaoh of Egypt passed legislation granting equality and civil and human rights to all people in Egypt. The Pharaoh of Egypt made it possible for people to migrate and immigrate to Egypt if there were famine, if they lived with famine in their homelands. But then Joseph died, and then that Pharaoh died, and the Bible says there came to the throne of Egypt a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. There came to the power of the land a Pharaoh who knew not of justice and equality. Now, I'm not getting in politics now, I'm a preacher. There came a power in the land a ruler who did not count equality and dignity worth his or her energy. There came to the throne of Egypt. Now, I'm just talking about Egypt now. I'm not talking about anybody else. A new Pharaoh. And this Pharaoh in the Bible, I'm just talking about the Bible now, I'll be clear. And these are welcoming remarks, not a sermon. But there came to the throne of Egypt a Pharaoh who said, there are too many immigrants coming into our country. There are too many refugees coming into our country. And we must build a wall around Egypt to protect the Egyptians, lest the numbers of brown people overwhelm us. Now again, I'm just staying in the Bible. Let me be clear. And this Pharaoh decided that what he would do to control the growth of the Hebrew population in his midst, since he couldn't build a wall to keep them out because they were already in, he decided, and this is what the Bible says, to enslave all of the Hebrews. Y'all with me now? And so he eventually enslaved the Hebrews, taking them and forcing them to labor without reward, forcing them to labor with low wages, forcing them to labor without benefits, forcing them, reversing affordable health care that they had before. Stay with me, somebody. I'm just preaching the Bible. Just saying, well, it's in the text. Forcing them, and then when their numbers still continue to increase, this Pharaoh decreed in the Bible that it was necessary to slaughter the Hebrew children, particularly Hebrew baby boys, lest they grow up and become an army against Egypt. And so they ignored public education. They ignored health care for children and all people. They ignored everything the Children's Defense Fund has been talking about for years. They didn't care about poor children and black children and native children and Asian children and Hispanic, Latino children. Didn't care about children who didn't have money. Now, I'm not into politics. I'm a preacher. And this is not a sermon, but welcoming remarks. But that's what happened in the Bible. But behind the scenes, there was and is a God. And God will always have a witness. And so God raised up two women. One's name was Shipra, and the other's name was Purah. I wanted to name my two daughters that, but my wife stopped me on that one. And Shipra and Purah were Hebrew midwives. And it was their job to help the Hebrew women at the birthing stool to give birth to children. But they had received orders that they were to kill the Hebrew baby boys, turn them over to the soldiers as soon as they were born. Yes, basically, that was a way of, let's end early childhood education. Y'all with me now? Let's end feeding programs to make sure children have health and nutrition. Let's desiccate our public schools and ignore them. This is the Bible. I'm saying in the scriptures. And then the Bible says, and I quote, in spite of the orders of Pharaoh, the Hebrew midwives, Shipra and Purah, feared God. And they did not obey the orders of the Pharaoh. And they let the Hebrew children live. In fact, the Bible says they actually lied. They actually lied, and God blessed their life, because what happened was they were ordered to, and I'm going to stop in a minute, but they were ordered, as soon as the women give birth, you take the baby from the women. Don't give it to the mama. Take the baby, give the baby to the soldiers, and then the soldiers would kill it. Well, these two midwives did a Harriet Tubman. They said, we don't know what happened. The baby escaped. They just flat out lied. The soldiers said, where's the baby? They said, you know something? You know, Pharaoh, we just don't know what to do. These Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. The Egyptian women are polite and nice. These Hebrew women are hollering and screaming and carrying on. And before we get there, they done pop the baby out and the baby's gone. And the Bible says God blessed them. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard called this the teleological suspension of the ethical. And so what they did was they realized that there was a law higher than man's law, the law of God, the God who decrees freedom for all of God's children, the God who believes in love as the way of life, the God who has decreed human equality from the very beginning. And they believed in this God, and they knew that this God would deliver them. And these women kept saving these Hebrew children until one of these children was named Moses, and that baby saved them. The child you save today may save you tomorrow. I say all of that to say that there will always arise pharaohs who know not Joseph. But people of God know that behind the veil of history, behind the ambiguities of life and existence, standeth God within the shadow. The God who is the author of love, the God who is the author of justice, the God who is the source of compassion, and the God who can lead us and show us on our way. If you don't believe me, and I'm going to sit down now because these are just welcoming remarks, you might believe the Animal Planet. I watch the Animal Planet regularly. It just helps me to kind of focus, because if you watch animals, you learn a lot about people. Anyway, this one particular show was a show about this mother bear, and she had her baby bears, her cubs, and she was raising her baby bears as we must raise our children and young people, so that they become bears in the best sense of the word. And we must raise human beings, human adults of dignity and honor and worth, and she was doing what a mother bear does. Well, one of the little cubs, he decided he was going to go play on his own. And he left his mom and his brothers and sisters. I don't know where the daddy bear was, but I'm going to leave that one alone. Anyway, he left his mama and his brothers and sisters and went off to play by himself. Well, the camera was following this baby bear, this cub, and he went off by himself, and he was just having a good time. And he was out in the woods, and he realized he was by himself, but he just kept playing until he turned and looked, and he saw this wolf. And he kind of was a little concerned because that wolf was licking his lips. And little cub kind of backed up a little bit. And the wolf took his position because I think the wolf knew this was dinner time. And so the wolf started moving toward the baby bear. And little cub backed up because he knew he was in trouble. And the wolf came forward again. And the cub backed up. Wolf took a step forward again. Little cub backed up. And he hit a tree. And he knew he was in trouble. And literally, this really was on the camera. And I'm a preacher, so I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not that much. But you could see the little cub's mind, and you could see he was like trying to figure out, what do I do now? I'm backed up on this tree, I'm stuck here, and this wolf is coming after me. And he did what, y'all know what we mean when we say, what would Jesus do? Little cub kind of thought his equivalent of what would Jesus do, what would mama do? And he remembered what mama would do in a situation like this. And the little cub got up on his hind legs, on his haunches, and raised a little paw like a preacher, raised a little paw, and he went, meow. And the wolf, this is true. I mean, I really did see it. It was like the wolf started smiling and said, this is so cute. And little cub went after him again and went, meow. And the wolf was still smiling. And the little cub kept trying to do whatever he could. He went, meow, meow. And the wolf said, I had enough of this. And the wolf was about to come forward, and all of a sudden, the wolf stopped in his place, had a look of terror on his face, and ran. And little cub. So you are young people. Y'all too young to remember George Jefferson, but George Jefferson used to pat himself on the back, and little cub was patting himself on the back, feeling all good, say, I did that. And then little cub turned around and looked, because behind the tree was Mama Bear. My brothers and sisters, no matter who the Pharaoh is, no matter how much the Pharaoh tweets, no matter what the Pharaoh does, we got a mama bear, we got a God, and don't you get weary, don't you give up. Walk together, children. Don't get weary, because there's a great camp meeting on the promised land. God love you, God bless you, and you keep the faith.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for a political analyst and host of AM Joy, Joy Ann Reid.
Hello. Woo. That's a lot of y'all. Good morning. All right, you all revved up? See, I work on Sunday, so I need a word. So thank you, Bishop Curry. I got to surround myself with pastors just because I'm at work when I'm supposed to be in church. So, and I have been told that the Reverend Sheila Jackson is here, standing in the front row. Stand, please, sir. Be acknowledged. I'm telling you, I have a surplus of reverends. You got to make sure you have enough pastors nearby and some civil rights leaders, because you just never know what's going to happen. All right, so we're going to jump right into our program this morning, and I am pleased to introduce to you, and I would like you all to give a big warm welcome to a woman who has been an inspiration to me personally, an inspiration I think to all of us in the country for the dignity and grace and just the strength that she has shown in all that she has dealt with. Please put your hands together for Ms. Sabrina Fulton. Thank you. And before we get started, I was neglectful in not thanking the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, who I believe is on her way out. She's going to come back in a little bit. I know you have to do congressional business. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you. Thank you to Congressman Cedric Richmond, who is the chair of the CBC. You guys have done an excellent job, so thank you. This is really well done, and thank you all. All right, so let's just jump right into it, Sabrina. You know, you and I met under the worst of circumstances. And when I first met you, I remember the first time that I had the opportunity to interview you. It was at your church, at a service where you were honoring your son. And I'm sitting sort of off to the side in the front row and watching this service because we were going to do the interview immediately afterward. And I can remember just as I would look over, first of all, it was very difficult just for me as a mother, just to sit through the service, and as a journalist to stay stoic through the service. And I thought to myself when I met you, and we were actually dressed alike. One of the fun things about it is if you go back and look at that interview on YouTube, we're actually completely coincidentally in the same colors. But I said to myself, I have no idea how that woman is standing. I have no idea how that woman is speaking. I have no idea how that woman is not shattered. Just tell us a little bit about your background, how you grew up, because I think everyone kind of wants to know where you got the strength that you have.
I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, and so I didn't know it was so many people in here.
I know, that's what I said, there's a lot of them.
But I'm kind of glad I didn't know it was so many people before I came out. But, so I'm just going to act like I'm having a conversation with Joy, and we're sitting in the living room.
Yeah, there you go. Just a really big living room with a lot of guests. Right.
I grew up in Miami. I'm from Miami, Florida, and yes.
305.
And I call myself the average mom. I call myself the average mom because, you know, I had the average family. I was married with 2 kids. I went to school in Miami. I graduated from Florida Memorial University. I have a bachelor's in English with a minor in communications. I used to work for the housing agency right when this happened. And so, in Miami-Dade, and so I was used to helping other people. You know, I came from a service background. Nothing I have done in my career, in my, you know, just experiences would have prepared me for this. I would get off from work, go to work at 8 o'clock, get off at 5 o'clock, come home, yell at my kids like everybody else, to clean their room, do their homework, you need a haircut, and then start dinner, turn the news on, start dinner. I know this sounds familiar to a lot of the moms that's in here. Yell at the kids to take out the garbage and, just average stuff. And so in my mind, I would tell myself, okay, when I was growing up, I went on vacation every year. My mom would make sure that we had a vacation every year. And so those are some of the pictures that you see is because I told myself that my kids have to go to vacation every year. Another thing is I have a bachelor's degree, so I told them that they have to get a bachelor's plus, meaning you have to do one level up with the next generation. So if your mom have a high school diploma, then you have to get a bachelor's. And if your mom has a bachelor's, you need a master's. And if your mom has a master's, you need a PhD. Mm-hmm. And so each generation needs to push the next generation to go one level up. So that's what I would tell my boys, and I had one house and one car. I told them they need 2 houses and 2 cars. I used to keep roughly about $5,000 in my savings account. They had to keep $10,000. They need to keep $10,000. And so I just pushed them. Average mom, average family. And then my life was interrupted. And the reason why I say it was interrupted is because I have to continue to live my life now without my son. And I do have an older son. His name is Javaris Fulton. Look him up. He's on social media. Tell him you heard his mom speaking in D.C. He's very low-key, but I'm very proud of him because, of course, he has a bachelor's degree from FIU in Miami, Florida International University. And I just think about the day of that got the call that Trayvon didn't come home, and then Trayvon was deceased and everything. And then one of the things that I talk about is that that wasn't the worst day of my life. That the day that I got the call, the worst day of my life was seeing my son in the front of my church, the same church that you interviewed me at, in a casket, like at 17. I mean, that crushed me. That crushed my world. And a lot of people tell me how strong I am, but I really didn't feel the strength within. It was one thing that Bishop Jakes told me, and he said that I was strong. And he said, the reason why people see you as being so strong is you don't talk about your weak times. So I need to talk more about when I was weak, when you didn't see me. When you didn't see me on the news and doing interviews, those were my weak times. And I had them often. As a matter of fact, I'm 6 years away from my son's death, and I still cry because I carry this around every day. But one of the things that I could tell you is that even though the pain is in my heart and I'm missing my son on a daily basis, my anger that I have, I do not think of negative thoughts because I want to do something that leaves a legacy for Trayvon Martin. And so it makes me want to do some positive things like help kids and help other families and help other mothers and change laws and run for office.
And when you talk about leaving a legacy for Trayvon, I can remember just in the newsroom, all of the, and it shouldn't have been a controversy, but the controversy over the depictions of Trayvon Martin, of whether or not a photo of him was an accurate depiction. Because I think for a lot of people, you're seeing a young man riding a horse. This kid is horseback riding. He's a suburban child. This incredible, the Hollister picture, he had a baby face. And I think a lot of times our children are viewed as older than they really are. But the photo that people most associated with Trayvon, now and then, was this black and white photo, this iconic black and white photo of him in the hoodie, that I think symbolizes not just Trayvon himself, but really came to symbolize Black Lives Matter. That photo, you see it and you instantly know it. Talk about the process, because I think for a lot of mothers, that was a wake-up call that we need to have that photo of our child. That God forbid anything happen to our child, we need to be ready with the depiction we want, not the depiction someone else might want. Can you talk about the process of deciding that that was the photo that was going to represent your son?
Well, I actually didn't make that decision. You know, that was a picture that was on his Facebook page that was stolen. It was extracted, it was used, it was borrowed. And so that just became the picture of Trayvon Martin, because at the time he did have the hoodie on. I don't know why, only the young people will be able to tell us. Where the young people? Okay, the young people know why they wear those hoodies so much. Maybe it's style, maybe it's fashion. I think it's a fad right now.
I think all my youngest son wears our hoodies. I'm pretty sure he has no other clothes.
Listen, I was sitting out by the pool in Orlando last weekend, and I saw 3 hoodies. And I'm like, they love these hoodies. I don't know why. And it's way before Trayvon.
Oh, yeah.
But they love these hoodies. And the young ladies wear the hoodies. It does not matter if it's a young man, a young lady. It could be Hispanic. It could be black, white. It does not matter. They love those hoodies. And it doesn't matter the temperature outside. You know. And so I complained about that same hoodie. But that became the symbol of Trayvon. I mean, it wasn't anything, you know, that I inspired, but I will take the credit for it.
Yeah. Hey, and I mean, to the point where a member of Congress actually was pulled off the floor, a former Black Panther, pulled off of the House floor for wearing it. It was a symbol in and of itself. What in your mind, well, what do you want Trayvon's life to symbolize? To you, what should it symbolize for us?
First of all, I wanted to symbolize, that's pretty deep, but I wanted to symbolize that we woke up, because Trayvon wasn't the first person that was profiled, that was followed, that was chased, that was murdered, that went through a Mickey Mouse court system, the injustice that, you know, we clearly saw. He wasn't the first one, but I think it reunited what we needed to see. We reunited. He became a sacrifice. I would not have given him up for anything in this world. Let me be clear on that. I would not have volunteered his life. I would have given my life before I would have given his life. And so I just want people to know that I didn't volunteer, you know, my son at all. I would rather me have my 2 boys and my little house with my little job and my little car and, you know, just living life, just enjoying life. But instead, I guess God had other work for me to do. And I'm not sitting here willingly, let me just say that. But I just feel compelled that there are things that I can work on. There are things that I can motivate, I can maneuver, I can inspire. And so I just have to be encouraged. I have to know that everything happens for a reason. And even though we may not understand what that reasoning is, because I still don't know why my son was killed. You know, but at the end of the day, I know it was a different purpose. And so I just have to live in my purpose. I have to follow what God is telling me to do. I never would have thought that I would be sitting here. I never would have thought that, you know, just none of that. And that's why it's so, I have to do it. I have to speak. I can't be quiet. I have to speak for my son. And so we all have to speak up for our children. We all have to do this. Don't wait until something happens to your child to decide, listen, I need to speak up.
You know, talking about the symbolism of Trayvon, and I want to talk about the advocacy work that you've been doing since he was taken away from you and the world. But before I get there, one of the things I think that the Trayvon Martin murder symbolized for us was it transferred the fear that Black parents have of the police interacting with their child. And for the first time, we learned that the same police powers that police use with impunity could be used by a civilian. People were not aware that that sort of quasi-police power could be transferred to a non-police officer. When you were in that courtroom, Is that the thing that most surprised you, or what most surprised you about your experience in the criminal justice system as a victim trying to get justice for your child?
One of the things that most surprised me is that there is not a process, a procedure for everybody. It's not, they should have, if it's a loss of life, if it's a death, then the person should automatically be taken in right then, right there. No, you ask questions at the police station. And it's not done for everybody. My son was dead on the ground, and they did a background check on him. They did an alcohol and drug testing, and he didn't shoot anybody. He didn't even have a gun. But the person that shot him was not even, he was questioned they asked him a few questions. You know what I'm saying? They did not do a background check on him. They did not do a drug and alcohol test. So just flip the script around and just imagine if Trayvon had shot him. My son would be in jail. Day one, soon as it happened. And so we need to have a process that is consistent, to say the least. It needs to be consistent. If you're going to do a drug and alcohol test on the victim, why sure you need to do a drug and alcohol and a background check on the person that shot and killed him.
Absolutely.
That was one of the things that just took my whole head off. The other thing was sitting in the courtroom. You know, it's difficult when people tell you that they're sensitive to your feelings, but then they saying all kind of negative things. You know, you just really have to be careful of those type of people. And so I learned that everybody that says that they're sorry, they feel sorry for what has happened, they don't really feel sorry, because when the verdict came out, there was a loss of life for a 17 unarmed child. And I saw people in the courtroom smiling, shaking hands, grinning, laughing. I didn't understand what were you rejoicing about?
Right.
There is a loss of life. And people don't quite get that. When the trial first started, remember one of the attorneys on the defense made a joke.
Yep.
How could you make a joke? And this is a murder trial. I think we have become so nonchalant with death. We have become so, you know, I think we've become accustomed to people getting shot and killed, and we should not. And we should not just move to the next incident, and then the next incident, and then the next incident. I'm doing my part, but everybody has to do their part. We all have to get involved.
And one of the ways that you've gotten involved, obviously, is creating the Trayvon Martin Foundation. But you've also become a leader of what has been called the Mothers of the Movement. Reverend Al Sharpton, I believe, coined that term. And it is this, as you and Tracy Martin have both said, you're in a fraternity and a sorority you didn't pledge, that you didn't want to be in, but you now have this bond and this sisterhood with Eric Garner's mom, with these other moms, with Michael Brown's mom. You are really a leader among those mothers, because unfortunately, in a lot of ways, you were out there first. Tell us about the advocacy work that you're doing and the change that you and these moms, these fellow moms, are making.
One of the things that I do is called a Circle of Mothers. And it was a dream that I had. And it was so vivid that I just got up in the middle of the night and I started writing. And it was as if I had already attended the Circle of Mothers and I was just writing about my experience. And when I got up that next morning, I had pages and pages that I had written. And so now we're about 5 years later, and we I do it at the event actually in Miami, Florida. I bring the moms together, and I do high-profile mothers. I do local moms. I just do moms that I have come in contact with, or somebody, attorney has told me that, you know, maybe they need that experience. But it's about bonding. It's about healing. It's about educating the moms. I mean, we laugh, we cry, we get our makeup done. We have a church service. We do all of those things in one weekend. It's like we're going back to back. But it's a very good experience for a mom who has lost a child. And it's a very good experience for a support mom like yourself who has not lost a child, because I don't think it should be a room full of broken moms like myself. I think we need the uplifting from other moms. And so I've had Mike Brown's mom there, and Tamar Rice, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Jordan Davis, all of those high-profile moms like myself I've had in the same room. And she probably left Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Yeah, she had to go to the Hill.
She actually came and spoke to my circle of moms maybe about 3 years ago, but she came along with Congresswoman Frederica Wilson and also Corrine Brown, who we also need to continue to lift in prayer. But that's what it's about. It's about moms helping other moms. It's about women helping other women, sisters helping other sisters. And so I really believe that's how I got over, or how I moved to the next step, was because I just continued to move and I continued to help other people. And I think it took a lot away from what I was going through. And so I just want to encourage everybody to go to the Trayvon Martin website. I know you guys probably already been and already seen the documentary, but I just want to encourage you to just go to the website. It's TrayvonMartinFoundation.org.
And it was an honor to participate in that documentary, but it was hard for me to talk about it. So I can imagine it's very difficult for you to have to retell this story over and over again. I think your strength is incredibly admirable. I don't see Jerry, who's our stage manager, so he's not in front of me, so I'm gonna ask another question because he's my timekeeper. The case of Trayvon Martin really showcased the power of district's attorney, for better or worse. That a really active district attorney who really believes in their case is really important. It wasn't clear that the prosecution in your case, how strongly they believed in the case. I mean, they did, I guess, what they would have seen as their best. But it's important to have that advocacy. You said, no, you don't think so, but So we are right ahead of a huge midterm election. A lot of the time, our community is so focused on the top, on the White House, that we're forgetting those down ballot races. A little bit of an advice of what should people be looking for in an elected DA? What questions should we be asking before we go in and just punch that ballot for a DA?
One of the things that I look for is I make sure that their issues line up with what would benefit me, because that's a big deal. I mean, if you are for, I can't think of one right off the top of my head that's on the ballot right now, but I look for a candidate that has the same views and benefits that I'm thinking about. The same things. I want their issues to line up with what I'm doing. And everybody, all the issues are not going to line up, but the one that has the most, I look for that person. Of course, I mean, I don't need to tell anybody in here what political party, because you all have your own, and we know which one that is, the best one that they have, but we... but we have to start, people give out telephone numbers and they say, call this and complain about this and complain about that. We don't complain enough. And so we got to start writing letters, and we got to start making those calls like we should.
Oh, I'm a letter writer. No, the nasty letter is a powerful thing. You know that it really works. Sabrina Fulton, it is always such an honor and a pleasure to be in your presence. Thank you for all that you've done, for inspiring us, for showing us the meaning of strength and resilience. You are not a broken mom. You are a wonder mom. We love you. Thank you. Thank you all. All right. I'm going to give you one more hug.
Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Yes, absolutely. We're going to... Thank you, love. All right. All right, I'm going to take a walk over to the podium where I will be sitting. Continue to sit. All right, because I'm going to introduce our panel. We have an amazing panel for you that is going to continue this conversation, because the theme of this town hall is the power of black women. We love our black men as well, but black women, we know, lead in such a significant way, particularly when it comes to politics, that we want to lift up the power of black women. So prepare your questions. I want to let you all know that this is being live streamed, so give good face at all times. You never know when you're going to be seen by the public. The hashtag, if you'd like to tweet and participate that way, of course, is CBCFALC18. That is also, and it didn't appear on the screen before, so I just want to remind you, that's also the Uber code. Uber is generously giving you all, I believe it's a free or discounted ride, so you can take advantage of that by using CBCFALC, right? Y'all didn't know that? Am I telling you something? Oh. It's discounted. Okay, they said don't say free. Sorry. I just committed Uber to make you all get home for free. Discounted, not free. Nothing is free. Darn it. All right, let me introduce our panel, and I'm going to leave the space at the end open for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee because she, the chairwoman of the CBC Foundation, she did have to run to the Hill, but she's going to try to come back. So let me introduce first, in the second chair, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Transportation and Protective Security, the co-founder of the Congressional Caucus on Women. Wait a minute. Sheila Jackson Lee is here. Let's give a round for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of the great state of Texas, chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's Board of Directors. Thank you so much for being here. And then next up is the great Bonnie Watson Coleman, representative and ranking member of the Subcommittee on Transportation, Protective Security, co-founder of the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls. By the way, she's also the first Black woman to have been elected to the Congress in the state of New Jersey. Looked that up before we came out. Next chair over is Representative Stacey Abrams, former House Minority Leader of the Georgia House of Representatives, founder of the New Georgia Project, co-founder of Now Account Financial Services Firm, and 2018 gubernatorial candidate for the state of Georgia, the next governor of the state of Georgia right there. Next up, Monica J. Turner, the Vice President of Selling and Marketing Operations for the Procter & Gamble Company. Give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you for asking me.
My sister from another network, Simone Sanders, Democratic strategist. The person I take selfies with at pretty much everything we go to. She's an amazing selfie taker, by the way, as well. And let us also introduce Elizabeth Dawes-Gay, who is the co-director of Black Mamas Matter Alliance and founder of Sisu Consulting. Give her a round of applause.
Yeah.
And last but certainly not least, DePelsha Magruder, the founder and president of Moms of Black Boys United, Inc. and Mob United for Social Change, Incorporated. Thank you very much to the great panel. Now, I'm going to remind you that we're going to do about 30 minutes of Q&A, and then we're going to turn it over to you for some questions from the audience. Emphasis on questions, not speeches, just saying. We love y'all, but, just in case. You always have to hedge. I said I love a pastor, but if a pastor gets the mic, you never know what's going to happen. So I'm just hedging and saying keep your sermons really short. And we're going to start with some Q&A because I want to jump right in. Obviously, and I'm going to start with the Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, there's so much focus right now on the Congress for the negative reason of seeming just paralysis and inaction when it comes to the president. And you have, at the same time that that's happening, this sense of sort of impunity where the Congress isn't acting. At the same time, out in the world, you have Black women who are really uprising, who are really moving and pushing and actually changing the face of the Congress. You look at Alabama. So as Black women who are going into this 2018 election looking to change things, what can we actually change through Congress? How is it important for us to fixate on the Congress as a vehicle for change?
I cannot tell you how important it is to get your eyes focused on Congress, but let you have a panoramic view. Yes, there is a mother load that can be handled through the United States Congress. First of all, I think everybody in this room wants to see a government that is standing up and doing their job.
That's right.
I think we need that. Doing their job means that when you call, whether it is calling directly or whether you call in plea for help, somebody comes. When Puerto Rico called, somebody actually came and cared about whether people were living or dying. So Congress, for example, is the most powerful lawmaking body in the world. The conscience, the anchor inside that body are the 49 members of the Congressional Black Caucus and our brothers and sisters in the Hispanic Caucus and other caucuses working together. And they do have a vision for a better America. They do have a vision for saying, I need to listen cross generations. So what does Congress do? It does pass laws. And these laws are some that you are benefiting from. GI Bill, Voting Rights Act, Violence Against Women Act, changes in the criminal justice system, and there are those of us waiting to perch to jump into that. And what we do is, you pass a law, the Senate passes, that's the House, you're in the majority, you can be darn sure a piece, a part, or all of that law goes to the President of the United States. And that person cannot veto all of those bills. So those mandatory minimums. So my point is, there is power here, but I'm not arrogant. There is power in our gubernatorial. That is why I am so ecstatic of the history that is being made from Georgia to Florida to Maryland. There is history being made. And I know that the former minority leader of the State House in Georgia would say, friends, don't forget the state legislature. Absolutely. That's where you lost the expanded Medicaid, because you didn't have the right folk saying, I care about health care. So what I would say, Joy, is that we in the Congress, and particularly the CBC and the foundation is a policy arm, we are not selfish to say me, me, me. What we say is, let us be a driving force, but let it be a pyramid, or let it be however it rains down or rains up. We need these other local officials. We need the governors. We need the attorney generals. Thank you, Joy. Because what I would just say in conclusion, I wonder what people are thinking who have missed what we might have called maybe the good days. Maybe you were asleep in the last 8 years. Maybe you were not around at the kind of end of successes in the civil rights movement when voting rights, and so there was joy there and civil rights. And so you'd wake up and say, what is here for me? And what the Congressional Black Caucus says, what is here for us, is a joyous fight. We are not in any way intimidated by the fight. And we will work with people and fight with them for the betterment, whether they are Caucasian, Anglo in Texas, Hispanic, South Asian, African American, from the diaspora, wherever they are. We will fight with those who will fight with us that will make the generational change. And so what is here for you? To get on up. To get on up and to get on out, to make a difference in your sphere. And I think that's why we have this town hall meeting, and that's the explanation point is the women in this room. Remember what I said, you got to surge. And that's what I think people should see when they see Congress. Yeah. We are just trying to drive out the forces of goodness so that it can spread and we can have change all over America.
And you know, I think it's important because I think for a lot of members of Congress of color, it's just my experience is that CBC members have a really close-knit relationship that's a lot more personal and interactive than a lot of folks do in their districts with their constituents. And I want to talk with you, Congressman Watson Coleman. You're on the Transportation Committee, and we know you come from the state where a governor has used transportation as a weapon, #Bridgegate. And we know also that if you look at the history of black communities and communities of color, transportation can either be a benefit or it can be that highway that goes through the former town, you know, beautiful town of Opelika that then turns it into a town with no economic prospects. That we know we've been the victims of it. We know that we've been the beneficiaries of it. Yeah. And I wonder if you can give us kind of a checklist of things that we need to be thinking about. I think we vote for our member because we know our member. We vote for them because we like their name, whatever reason. But what are some of the concrete policies that these incredible, and I'm sure all y'all are voters, need to have on their checklist of pragmatic things that they should be asking for from their member of Congress?
So first of all, we will control how the money is spent, because we will control the bills that come out of appropriations. So we won't be building walls, we'll be building communities, you know? The president will have a budget that he likes, but Congress is where the spending takes place. So we're yay or nay on the spending. Secondly, we're doing our job. We will do our job. If we get out and do our job on 2018, then Congress gets to do its job by doing the kind of oversight that has been absolutely ignored by the Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee. So we will do our oversight. And thirdly, we will change the horrible tax bill that 83% of which the benefit went to 1%, and the rest of us got the crumbs, and some folks don't even have the crumbs. And then we'll be able to ensure that we're not eviscerating access to affordable health care and pre-existing conditions. And so there are so many other issues. We'll stop them from, by cuts upon cuts, trying to take a woman's right to choose, whether or not we're doing it domestically or in international aid, you know? But we're also concerned about economic development and job development. Right. We're also concerned about a good environment. We'll stop them, this president, from doing things like releasing methane gas into the air again after we found out what negative impact that has. So a Democratic-controlled House and Senate, hear God, and Senate, amen,
Amen.
can happen if we vote the way we can, if we make sure that every neighbor, that every church member, that every friend you hang out with, don't assume they're registered and don't assume they're enthused. You know, take responsibility for other people. Important policy initiatives will be in our hands. We will be able to change the course of the evil that we're experiencing to make sure that there's opportunity and a better way of life and opportunity for everybody. That's the kind of stuff that we'll be able to do if we're in the majority. And if we send bills to the president and he vetoes them, and then he sends funding requests to us, and we say, no, sir, then we have leverage.
Important. Stacey Abrams, I have to say, so we do a Facebook Live after the show every weekend, both days, and I would say probably the most asked question, because we do a little Q&A, that we get from the folks on our Facebook Live is, can Stacey win?
Yes.
And I always say the exact same thing. She can win if y'all vote for her.
Exactly.
Anybody can win if you vote for him. Hashtag Doug Jones in Alabama. Everybody said impossible. Yes. Alabama is a red state, impossible, and then it was impossible until it was possible. Andrew Gillum in Florida getting that nomination, impossible until it was possible. Talk a little bit about what is happening in the South. I feel like the Democratic Party is waking up as if out of a deep sleep to discover that there's this whole region of the country that's always been critical, the Congressman is nodding, critical to the party's prospects, but they're discovering that the key to it is black women. What's going on in the South?
So I think one of the most important changes is the demographic change in the South. And Georgia is a perfect example. Most people think of Georgia as gone with the wind. It is not that. Georgia today demographically is 53% white non-Hispanic, 32% African American, 9.5% Latino, and 4.5% Asian Pacific Islander. Georgia will be a majority minority state around 2025, 2026, and it will be the only state that's majority minority where the majority of the minority is African American. Okay?
Hence all the voter suppression.
Hence all the voter suppression, exactly. And the reason this matters is that for more than a generation, what's happened from the politics is that we've been chasing those who used to be Democrats, those who shifted to the Republican Party as the Republican Party refined its narrative. And the reality is, if that's the ideological belief that you hold, that is your perspective, that is your prerogative. The challenge has been there's been no organized effort to garner the votes of those who actually agree with us, those who share the values of faith and family and service and responsibility lived through our politics. This notion of combining a progressive belief system that says that my progress is your progress. That's all being progressive means. It means I'm not going to win by myself. And that has been the ethos that has sustained the black community for its entire history. And that's what's really being lived right now in our politics. If you look at how Andrew won in Florida, Andrew was discounted because they did not believe that African Americans were going to vote for him at the numbers necessary for him to win his primary. And he won big. It was 3 points, but that's a big win. I won by winning majority white communities in my state that no one thought. I won Forsyth County, and if you were older than 35, you remember when Oprah went to Forsyth. I won Forsyth County against my opponent, and thank you. And what this means is the Obama coalition, as it's described, exists most acutely in the South. We have to work together. It is a combination of African American, Latino, Asian Pacific Islander, white, and in some parts of our states, the Native American community is a little larger. So if you're looking at North Carolina, a little bit in South Carolina, but the reality is we have built a progressive coalition by uniting our needs along with our politics. And so as Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee lays out the challenges that we face, as Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman talks about the issues, what I need folks to understand is that it's the states that are the incubators of change. So let's be clear. Jim Crow wasn't a federal law, it was state law.
Right.
Mass incarceration didn't start in 1994. It started in 1980s or 1970s with Ronald Reagan as the governor of California. If you want to know what eroded the social safety net, that was Tommy Thompson in the 1980s and the 1990s in Wisconsin. And if you want to know what killed Trayvon Martin, it was Stand Your Ground and Jeb Bush in Florida. That's what happened. And so what I think the parties are waking up to realize is that in the Deep South and in the Large South, from Texas to Florida, that we have opportunities because we have the population, but we also have the issues, and we have the momentum. Because finally, we are talking to these voters. Representative Coleman said that you got to talk to everybody. My belief is this: we have to respect our voters. And we have to understand that just because we know something doesn't mean they know it, but their lack of knowledge is not ignorance. Their lack of knowledge is a lack of our responsibility taking. And so what we have to do, thank you, what we have to do is connect the dots. People don't wake up knowing what the governor does. And I'll wrap up with this. I lived next door to a neighbor for 4 years. When she first moved in, she came in, I was elected to the legislature in 2006. She moved into the house next door in 2007. She would ask me all kinds of questions about what was happening, what she needed to do for this, if she had a question. And then in 2008, she went to go and vote. And she came back and she was like, "You're my state representative." And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I didn't know that." I was like, "Well, why'd you ask me that?" She's like, "I just thought you knew stuff." The reality is, some folks just think you know things. We have to take responsibility for connecting the dots. Because if the issue is mass incarceration, let folks know it's the governor who decides. If the concern is decriminalization of marijuana and making sure you don't go to prison for the rest of your life for a joint, that's your DA's decision. And so it's making sure we are connecting the dots for our friends who are not sitting in this audience because they don't know they should be here.
Indeed. So, Monica Turner, when it comes to the African American community, and particularly Black women and the power of Black women, I think one of the things that is way too often overlooked is the power of our dollars. And that corporate America may still not recognize that power. How do we get corporate America to focus on the fact that we don't just have voting power? We're not just waking up to our electoral power and our political power. We have economic power, too. And sometimes the lack of economic access and the access to subcontracts and opportunities is one of the things that keeps us out of the ballot box. If we're too busy trying to make a living, we may not even be able to get there, right? So how do we, give us some advice from the corporate perspective. How do we get your world to recognize the power of Black women?
Thanks, Joy. And I'm really honored to be with all of you because I absolutely believe that we have to drive the connections that you talk about and that the private sector has to be a part of the solution. And there's a couple of ways that we'll talk about that I'll offer as to what some of those areas are and what are we working on and what should we care about in the corporations. And the very first one that we talk about a lot is when you have a company like a Procter & Gamble, who actually is one of the largest advertisers in the world, they have a power to be able to change some of the images that we see. And we know that some of what holds us back, whether it be implicit bias or unconscious bias, actually has an impact on how people vote, how they think about us, particularly Black women. And so when we have corporations taking on that intentionality to change the image that you see, that actually will have an impact in connecting what we can do from an empowerment standpoint. And we're committed to doing that in our advertising and really tackling the biases that we see by having positive images of all people, but in particular people of color. And you'll see a lot of that type of advertising, whether it be fathers who are really present fathers in our advertising, positively depicted, or if you see multicultural women depicted in a way that's celebrating their differences. So I want to really talk about that it is coming together to make sure all parts are working to the effort. I think the second thing I would tell you is the economic empowerment. And I probably look at it slightly different. I really advocate for us to have opportunity in these corporations because it's power in what you can earn, then therefore what you're earning you can actually transfer into being a part of the power that we want to pool our dollars so that we can affect change. But secondly is the power that they have in what we're trying to do in order to offer economic and be a part of the solution with governments and non-governments. So I would say the thing that I'd like to continue to see, and I think that it's really important because I do think they recognize the power. I think we can utilize our power even more, and we need to be a part of the solution collectively.
And so does Jerry give me a little instruction here to make sure I stay on time? I'm going to come back on that same theme, Simone, to you in a bit about whether the media is getting it. Because
yes.
we have some challenges in our profession as well in what we do. But I'm going to come to you first as a strategist, my friend, my millennial friend. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk to my kids. These people as well. We love these folks here, but let's talk to my children. How do we, other than the threats they get from their mother that they will be cut off financially if they don't vote, which I do use, no iPhone, I pay their phone bill. Other than that, how does either party, we won't be partisan, but the Democratic Party has the majority of the Black vote, the supermajority, but has really not managed to make a case that you should come out and stand in that line when it's a midterm and not just when it's Obama. Right? And that in that midterm, I mean, you look at what happened to Flint. What also happened to Flint, in addition to their water being poisoned, is that they went from 60-something% turnout for the state of Michigan in 2008 to 40-something% turnout in 10, back up to 60-something again when Obama came back out, and back down to 40 again in 14. And in those off years, that's when they elected the governments that gave them the water crisis. How do we make that case and make it real to young people that they need to be as passionate about these midterms as they are about the presidential race?
I think it's an important question. I would say two things. One, I think the way we usually, and I mean, I'm a millennial, I'm 28 years old, and the first time I could vote was for President Obama in 2008. I was a college student. Shout out to all the young millennials in the room. But oftentimes I've sat in far too many rooms, and I like to think of myself as an engaged young person. And I sit in far too many rooms with the powers that be, people that I really look up to who say, oh, young people don't care. We fought and died and shed our blood for your right to vote, which is absolutely true. Which is absolutely true. But the difference for millennial young people like myself and John Lewis when he came up, because John Lewis wasn't always a congressman, he was a college student, is that they saw voting as the way that if they went to the ballot box, that their lives would change immediately. That voting was an immediate, that if we just cast our ballot, if we fought for the right to get to cast our ballot, and if we were able to go to the polls, our lives would automatically change. Well, young people, like I just told you, the young people like myself, we've been voting. Yet we have seen people that look like us being shot and killed in the streets, losing their lives in police custody. We have been voting, yet we all went to really good schools, paid for a lot of money, and then we get out and we're working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table to feed ourselves, not necessarily a family. You know, we have been voting, yet there's more turmoil in the world. So like voting for young people, you cannot it has not been directly connected. If we go to the polls today, tomorrow our lives will automatically change. And so we have to stop talking about voting in a way that if you just go to the polls today, your world will be better tomorrow, because we voted for Obama, but the Obama administration deported more people than any other administration before him. I love Obama, but we got to tell the truth. So we have to start talking about voting to young people as a necessary tool in the toolbox of social justice. And that we can't just protest, we also have to go to the polls and then hold our folks accountable. We can't just walk out, we also have to show up in the hearings. We have to show up to the city council meetings. We have to show up and vote for the gubernatorial candidates. And so we have to start talking about voting as a necessary piece of the puzzle, but not the entire puzzle. I think secondly, in terms of how do you get young people to come out in 2018, there are so many young people, I said in a lot of focus groups post-2016 with drop-off voters, which are overwhelmingly young people of color, overwhelmingly black and brown, who said, this is post-Muslim ban, post-Women's March, who said, we don't regret not voting for Hillary Clinton. And I said, well, why? I said, well, one, I didn't think my vote mattered, but two, what does the presidency have to do with what happens in my life every single day? And so there has been some type of disconnect, and I'm not talking about the professional politicos and very well-educated people necessarily in this room who are plugged into politics every single day. There's a large swath of young people who are engaged but are not plugged in watching every single day. And so I think a lot of people think of politics as partisan, and people say they don't like to get engaged in politics. What they really mean is they don't like to be partisan. But everything we do is political, and so we have to start talking about the things that are affecting it. Like if you want to go to the grocery store and get green lettuce around the corner from your house, that's political. If you like to be able to if you want to be able to go get your birth control on time every month, that is political. So, but we don't talk about it that way. And so that is how we have to speak very directly and candidly to young people. And then the third point, I think, is our power. Young people in America, a young black person in Georgia is one of the most powerful people on the planet right now.
Yeah,
absolutely. They are one of the most powerful people on the planet right now. A college student in Florida is one of the most powerful people in the planet right now. So we have to understand our power. And, you know, the politicians, the powers that be, don't want us to use our power. But if we show up, if we come out, if we step up, if we use our voice, if we go to the ballot box, that is the first step to helping hold people accountable. We have to stop talking to young people like we're not engaged, like we're not involved, and like we're not paying attention. We are. We are. But young, you know, millennials, we fickle voters. We're going to do better. Hopefully we're going to start in 2018.
Yeah. Well, you know, I can tell you that, not to editorialize, but, you know, you may not be able to vote and change your life tomorrow. But a DA who fails a Tamir Rice or the DA in Chicago who failed to take action, you can vote and change their life immediately if they don't do what you say, absolutely, right? You can change their job description to unemployed. So that's an important part of your power. That's my TED Talk. I'm going to move on. Elizabeth Dawes-Gay, your organization is called Black Mamas Matter Alliance. And I love that. I love the name of that. It gets to a very specific cohort of African-American women who are also incredibly powerful right now. Yesterday, I was honored to moderate a discussion on a poll that was commissioned, that Essence magazine participated in commissioning, which is great of them to do because it's really expensive to do a poll, that really zeroed in on what black women care about in this election cycle. One of the striking findings was the decline in health care as the #1 issue, and the spike in 2 issues becoming the issues that black women care about. The #1 issue, hate crimes and crimes of hatred against black people. #1 now, 55% of the respondents saying that's the most important issue, and criminal justice reform. So that these issues of violence, either against black people by the system or violence against black people because of racism, are now the top concerns of black women per this poll. So I'm wondering, what do we do about that then? If black mothers are now saying, I'm so concerned about this that it's making healthcare my 3rd issue, what should black women be doing about it in a 1, 2, 3 step way to change that dynamic?
Right. Thank you so much for that question, and thank you to Senator Harris and Senator Booker for their leadership and providing space for us to participate in this panel. And thank you to all the distinguished panelists who are here today. The Black Mamas Matter Alliance is a cross-sectoral alliance. That means we have folks who are advocates, who are public policy professionals, who are public health professionals, care providers, researchers, and other types of folks who are working to advance black maternal health rights and justice in the country. And we were founded at a time when we saw the connections between the Black Lives Matter movement and what was happening with maternal health. Core to our values are reproductive justice, birth justice, racial justice, but our very first value is that we believe Black mamas matter. We believe Black lives matter. And we see those connections between police violence and obstetric violence. The same misguided ideology of white supremacy, of racism, of discrimination that allows and permits police brutality and murder of Black people by the state is the same ideology that prevents Black women from having access to all the resources they need to be healthy, that permits providers to disrespect, mistreat, and abuse Black women in the healthcare setting. And so we have committed to doing something about it. And we have a motto that emerged during Black Maternal Health Week. In April, we planned and implemented the very first National Black Maternal Health Week, which was a great success. We reached over 1 million people online and in person, and it was really a demonstration that people were hungry to have this conversation, not only to discuss the problems, but to explore the solutions, to talk about, what could we do? And out of that emerged our motto, which is to listen to Black women, to trust Black women, and to invest in Black women. And it's highly important to listen to Black women as patients, as community members, as leaders, as people working on various issues. The community, our community, has solutions. We have answers. And unfortunately, there are people that don't want to listen to Black women. Our voices aren't valued. They don't want to hear us. But it's, until we change that, we can't move forward. The second piece is to trust Black women. And that's to believe what we say when we're telling you something. We have the lived experiences, the expertise, the knowledge, the wisdom, and we have valuable things to contribute to policy efforts, to care efforts across the spectrum of issues. And finally, to invest in Black women. So there are a lot of organizations that are working in communities, working locally, creating change, in care settings, in policy settings, in public health programs, who are organizing in the streets, getting people out to vote, who don't have the resources to do the work at the level that they could be. And so one of the things we strongly advocate for is a greater financial investment in those organizations organizations and efforts that are led by Black women, especially at the local level where they have the great ability to create change.
Okay. And so Dipelsha, your organization, Moms of Black Boys United, and we had Serena Fulton here, who was a stark example of a mom of a Black boy who had to become an advocate unwillingly. And so I wonder if that advocacy has changed in your mind. How old is the organization?
2 years old.
It's 2 years old. So it somewhat spans a little bit of the end of the Obama years. It feels like that kind of advocacy was so different in that era. How different is it for you now, and what does that advocacy entail?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here. And I will tell you, we were born in the summer of 2016 following the back-to-back murders of Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge and Philando Castile in Minnesota. I'm a mom of 2 young sons. At the time, they were 4 and 7. And I was just so psychologically assaulted, I would say, by those images that I was paralyzed, couldn't get out of bed, and knew that in that moment, really, I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I needed to connect with my sisters. I knew that I needed the support of other moms who could understand what I was feeling. And so this started as a Facebook group. I sent it to 30 friends who came to the top of my head, and it grew virally throughout the day. By the end of the day, within 12 hours, there were 21,000 moms from all over the country in this group, and we now have more than 180,000 moms of Black sons all around the country. Thank you. And we are forming chapters. So to answer your question, when we started, summer 2016, President Obama still in office. We thought there would be second President Clinton. All indications were that would be the case. So we started focusing on federal policy. We came to CBC that year. We weren't even an organization yet. We were a Facebook group. We came to CBC. We connected with people like Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. We started finding out what legislation was in motion. We clued in on de-escalation training. There was a bill going through the House on de-escalation training, and really started to look at federal policies that were in motion. But then all of our lives were turned upside down when the presidential election happened, and our strategy had to change immediately. So while we still focus on, of course, pushing for reform and change at the federal level, you know, we were very vocal in opposing the nomination of Jeff Sessions and Betsy DeVos, for example, because we thought both of them would be very dangerous for our children. But we quickly realized we needed to shift to more of a state and local strategy and to focus on identifying, as you said, the DA elections are very important, the judges' elections are very important, your mayoral elections, the gubernatorial elections. So we started to identify legislation at the state and local level that we could mobilize moms to get behind. And the real, there are two things that are really magical about our organization, I would say. One is it really is a support group for moms. You know, I was just in a really bad psychological place watching the news and needed to connect. So we really support each other in all kinds of ways. And I always say that whatever we need, we have in this organization. So people heard my cry, and it's all volunteer. People donated their time. We have attorneys, we have policymakers, we have accountants, HR professionals, social media experts, technologists who have built this organization because they are so passionate. So I'm not surprised by the data that you shared. I'm not surprised that criminal justice reform and hate crimes are #1 because I hear these moms' pain. I hear the stories every day of moms whose children have been discriminated against, who've been through the criminal justice system. So we're really focused on doing two things. We have a 501c3 called Moms of Black Boys United. I describe that as the what we can do side of the equation. So we focus on promoting positive images and narratives of Black males, but also really being a resource and support to help moms navigate all of the situations that their sons may find themselves in the education system, criminal justice system. Also, the mental health system is often a component. But we know that we've seen it. You know, we can do all that we can do, and that's often not enough. So that is why we're here at the CBC. We have to push for policy change. So we're here to partner with legislators to figure out how we can move the needle. We have a legislative platform. I'm happy to give you a copy. We're focused on things like de-escalation training, bail reform, use of body cameras, eliminating teen life sentencing. We have to push the system of change and push for accountability. And the last thing I will just share is that one of the things I'm most proud of is that we got involved in the Jordan Edwards case very early. We've actually spoken out on 41 cases of police brutality and death that have happened since we launched. So that's within 2 years. But we got involved in the Jordan Edwards case right away. We sent moms in Dallas to speak at the press conference. They stayed on it. We had moms calling from all around the country, the DA's office, the police chief, to push for that officer to be prosecuted. So I would say, you know, it's a sad story any way you look at it. But one of our proudest moments is that that officer was sentenced to 15 years. It's not enough. It's not enough, but it's a start.
Amen. All right, the Congresswoman had a comment. To respond on that, please do.
Well, first of all, thank you, both of you, and thank all the panelists, but thank you very much. I'm going to step away for a moment, but I wanted to not ignore sort of the looming word in the room that has been unspoken. And when you mentioned, I had a chance to step into the Black Women's Roundtable and the outstanding work done by the Essex group, and as you mentioned, hate crimes and racism. And I think when the women were saying hate crimes, they were incorporating what you had to deal with, what Bonnie Watson Coleman has seen, Simone has seen, what the governor has seen in terms of her work as a lawyer and a legislator.
I like that you already called her the governor. I saw that. I saw what you did there. Speak it into existence.
Slip of tongue, but
speak it into existence.
But a dream, the dream still demands.
Amen. Amen.
What Sabrina is facing and what mothers are facing. And so let me say this, because whenever the word is raised, the one who raises it is accused. So it is not where, oh, I understand what you're saying. It is, there they go again. And you know, it could have been 5 years ago, there they go again. It could have been yesterday, there they go again. But it's interesting that an independent study of women from all walks of life, business women, Procter & Gamble, corporate women, women who are married to diverse persons, who themselves are not racist. And I believe as a foundation, as a Congressional Black Caucus, as we weave throughout the legislative halls, tragically we see that. Tragically, when someone who heads a nation can challenge all manner of affirmed studies that have affirmed that close to 3,000 people died in Puerto Rico, that someone would cavalierly indicate it's not true. That says that you have lost the compassion for people who are diverse. So I just want to give part of my dream. My involvement with the CBCF is for its ability to reach that dream, the policy, the bringing of scholars, interns, fellows, to just be at the seat of power for them to take power. But let me be very clear. America's better than this. But what permeates, and I want to use, Sabrina, please forgive me because we've come very close, but I followed it, and I want you to know you didn't get into the weeds. One of the missing elements of that case was they didn't use racial profiling. The district attorneys were hesitant to be truthful, honestly, because the tapes said, "Sir, don't worry about it, we're coming. Stay in your car." And the description was, I won't do it because, I love him in his death. But that's what mothers and sons and fathers and uncles face. Yeah. Why you stopped on a lonely road that may not be where you normally would be. And so our friends have to confront it. Our elected officials have to confront it. We have to ask ourselves the question, when will we put race and racism to bed in America? So I would just indicate that as we take our toolbox away from this place, I say it all the time, grapple with yourself about race. That's going to help you in the 2018. Simone, that's going to say to millennials that we see what they go through, that it's still continuing. We're not trying to make it a shackle around you. We're not trying to oppress you. But we're trying to say, if that's something you confronted, then you need to vote. Because maybe you'll find someone that says, that's not important to me. My last point, it is my dream demands. It is the total reformation of the wrong-headed criminal justice system. For we started out where you're innocent until proven guilty. Now, I know there's some instances that we seem to be on the side that the people we think are guilty always seem to walk. And we are in the middle of incidences that can get more incredulous by the moment. Tamir Rice, incredulous. A young man with Skittles, incredulous. A man running away, incredulous. A man running away and the tape is held for a year, incredulous. A man in his apartment with his door closed, incredulous. And so, but remember, they have to go through the criminal justice system. There is juries, DAs, defendants and or public defender, witnesses. There's the potential of mandatory minimums, potential for the death sentence in some places. If nothing gets your core, and you can say, that's not me, try driving down a road. Try being Sandra Bland, driving down a road. I don't want to be oppressive, but I think what this study showed is that peace, beside them being activists, was looming in mothers and sisters and cousins. That was looming. And until we grapple with that and get it where it is not just us, it is we. That is what I hope will be driving. Not that we're driving, you're racist, but to understand there is a system that is going to require elected persons, appointed persons, people of your like mind that say this is over with. We confront hate crimes together. We stand against racism. And that's where I'm running to the polls. I want to draw those people out and get those people elected. And that's what it's all about.
Amen. Thank you, Congresswoman. And I know you had a comment as well, Congresswoman Watson Coleman.
Speaking to Simone, I think that it is really important to understand how significant it is to elect a Stacey Abrams governor, because she's going to determine who the public defender is, she's going to determine who the prosecutor is, and she's going to determine the relationship between the state of Georgia and the relationship to law enforcement in the various cities. It's important for you all to get out here and vote, because we had improvement in law enforcement dealing with people of color. We were getting there, holding them more accountable with consent decrees and training, et cetera. And all of that has been stopped by this administration. We're better than that, they're not. And so there's that compelling need right there. And also, I know we had our brothers' keepers, but we needed our sisters' keepers. So we created the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls to examine how much we're left out of both public policy, how our torture and pain is left out of the media, and how we need to examine legislation that advances fairness for us. And so in Congress, even in this environment, there are entities, Black Caucus, Black women and girls, et cetera, trying to do that work so that we can be prepared. You put us in the majority, and we will be able to change things and to cause things to happen, because as I said again, we control the spending.
Right.
So we can have the conversation unlike we've not been able to have now.
Thank you. And by the way, when you hear anybody called ranking member, that means that if you were to flip the Congress, the ranking member becomes the chair. So all y'all talk about how much you love people like Bonnie Watson Coleman. Would you rather her be the ranking member or the chair? That's the simplest reason to vote, right? You want Auntie Maxine, you like her? Well, she's the ranking member, right, on her committee. She would be the chair. So I don't know if the Democratic Party talks about that enough. All right, I want to turn it over to you guys now. We want to make sure we have time for your questions. We have a question. She jumped right up. She positioned herself right in the front. So what I want you to do is go to the microphone. If you could, young lady, we'll make you the first question if you can get over there. So everybody line up. We're going to have folks ask your questions or line up behind this young lady in the green. And I'm just going to ask you all to please keep your questions short. If you have a question for a specific member of the panel, that's fine. What we're going to try to do is have one person on the panel answer each question so that we can get through as many as we can. I'm going to start with you, young lady, if you could tell us who you are and ask your question.
My name is Brenda Seiler. I'm with the Washington Informer here in D.C. My question is to Stacey Abrams. We heard your data. We heard you talk about how you are talking to and reaching out to other people, but I've seen your ground game. It's very diverse. Talk about how you pulled together that diverse coalition and lessons that other political organizers can use.
And just for the panel, if you could keep your answers short, too, so we can get in more content.
Sure. So we have a diverse campaign. It begins at the top. We have 39 members of my campaign team. 46% are African American, 31% are white, 15% are Latino, 7% are Asian Pacific Islander. We have a community outreach organizational structure with 117 organizers on the ground. We will have, by the end of this month, 150. We have 12 regional organizers, and we have more than 32,000 volunteers. We go everywhere. If you want to win, go everywhere, talk to everyone. And the last thing I'll say is we've sent out on this past Friday, 1 million vote-by-mail applications, the most ever sent out in the state of Georgia. And they went to people who did not vote in the primary. By doing so, we are reaching voters who never hear from campaigns, telling them that if you are afraid that the polls are going to be shut down on you, like they tried to do in Randolph County, or that you have to have ID that you can't find, vote by mail. You can vote today, and we can win this election.
Okay, great. Yeah. You're up.
Hi, my name is Joe McNally. I'm the author of this book, The Hero in the Helmet, Colin Kaepernick. So my question is kind of rooted into what you all were talking about. First of all, I just want to thank you all. You guys are powerful, motivational, inspirational. All this black excellence is like flowing through me. I'm ready to go home and hit the ground running to go. But in my book, we talked about police brutality. We talked about prison reform. One of the things, I'll make this really quick. What I believe is for children, I believe that, we
got to have a question quick because we don't have time.
So my question is, in regards to Colin Kaepernick and in regards to officials saying, to like LeBron James, shut up and dribble or stop talking politics, right? What's your response to that kind of thing?
DePelch, you want to take that?
Sure. I say it's hogwash, and we have First Amendment rights, and athletes have a right to speak out wherever they want to, just as any other citizen does. And I applaud Colin Kaepernick for having the courage to do so. And we see the manifestation of that courage being celebrated by Nike, which I think is a wonderful way for the private sector to recognize.
Monica, can you jump in really quick? Because I think this was a lesson, right? Nike embracing Colin Kaepernick. Corporate America, are they too hesitant to embrace people like a Colin Kaepernick who have such incredible social capital? Should corporations be more proactive the way Nike was?
I think absolutely, because they are probably too slow. But I would say that I think a lot of corporations, though, are standing up for things that are important to our community or to causes like that he espouses. So while I think it's slow, I think there are corporations who are actually doing that.
We're stepping up very quickly.
So I think everyday people are making a statement about Kaepernick and about Nike supporting Kaepernick. I went out and bought Nike clothes that I didn't wear. I put it on Facebook, and like hundreds of people are saying, I'm going out and buy some, I'm going to buy some shares. And I'll tell you, the other thing is that I didn't watch one football game last season, including the Super Bowl. So I think individuals are having their voices heard as well.
And by the way, you said you purchase your Nikes. If you burn your Nikes, you're burning your money.
Yes.
You already paid for them. You're not hurting them at all. Okay,
and
so
you
thank you very
gotta
much.
take them off if you're gonna burn them.
Yeah, they said, what are you gonna run in? Okay, next question.
Excellent. Good morning. I am Martha Castex Tatum, Houston City Council member, and my comment is for our next governor of Georgia, Stacey Abrams. I had an opportunity to meet her on Saturday and heard her speak, and it pierced my soul because representation matters.
Yes. Right.
And hearing you talk and share your story about the first time you went to the governor's mansion is so critical. And I wish we could just take a minute
we
to
all
hear
love
her.
Stacey. We got to get to a question.
Okay,
real quick.
the
I'm sorry to
question
be harsh.
is, can she share that story because it is monumental, and I don't think that anything happens by happenstance, and that and I believe that God orchestrates it all. And her story of when she went to the governor's mansion as a young girl, and her going to the governor's mansion in November is amazing.
Okay, let's do a truncated version of that story.
I'll do the very short version. So I was the high school valedictorian in 1991. When you're valedictorian in Georgia, you get invited to meet the governor. My parents didn't own a car. We were too poor, so we took public transit.
I'm sorry, pause just one moment. I want to thank the Congresswoman. She has to go back to the Hill. Please thank the Congresswoman for being here, the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Board of Directors. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. See you soon. Okay, yes, continue.
Very quickly, we got invited to the governor's mansion, but we had to take public transit. So we get there, we're the only ones who arrive on the bus. Everyone else is driving in from 180 school districts across the state. We get to the security guard, and he tells me and my parents we are not allowed inside because we don't belong there. He doesn't ask for our invitation. My parents say, no, she is one of the valedictorians. He doesn't believe. And he basically sneers at the bus and says, you don't belong here. But my parents argued with him, as black parents will, and he decided to read his checklist and he let us inside. But the reason I tell this story is I don't remember meeting the governor of Georgia. I don't remember meeting my fellow valedictorians. My sole memory of that day was a man standing in front of the most powerful place in Georgia telling me I don't belong. I will be the governor so I can open those gates for everyone.
Okay, that is inspiring.
Bravo, bravo.
Yes, madam.
Greetings, Queens. My name is Lakeisha Davis Small. I'm a Washingtonian, born and raised in the Shaw and Howard community. And I know pain. I know what every facet of pain looks like, from sexual abuse to domestic violence, police brutality. And I've started a movement called Stop Stealing Our Souls, putting an end to sex exploitation, mental health, all the issues we deal with, because I stand before you with my question is, how can I help you all and you all help me help the community? Because I'm dressed up, but no one knows that I was sodomized at 5 by a cousin, a family member. You know, no one knows that I experienced domestic violence. No one knows that I was raised by a single father who did all he could because the mother walked out instead of the father.
Right.
So, you know, what can we do to help one another? Because we can all have questions and want you all to answer them, but what can I do to help you all so we can help our community? Because this pain is out of control.
Indeed. All right, who wants to take that?
One thing is you need to get in touch with us, the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls, because those are the kinds of issues that we're also trying to address. And so someone is here from my staff who's going to get to you, but we're on the website. So you find us, please connect with us because we need to be a part of you and you need to be a part of us.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your work and advocacy. Let's have the next question.
Yes, Leonard Rose from Princeton, New Jersey. Bonnie.
Hey, hey.
And you esteemed women up there. I love every last one of you. I just need to know, how do we convince our community as a whole to take this device here and use it like Barack Obama and everybody else has used it, to reach out to all of our people and say, you've got to get out there in this November election and make this change. We can affect this change, but this is probably the best device we have. How do we reach them at this point?
Simone, I think this is a good one for you.
Yeah, so one, I think there is no replacement for person-to-person contact. Right. So while I'm encouraging people to, hashtag vote, hashtag, CBCFALC18, power to the polls, we also need to get out there and get into the streets. Like what Stacey Abrams did not say about what her campaign was doing was by the primary, she had gone to every single county in Georgia. Twice?
Yes.
Twice. Okay, that is talking to people. And so I think the way we get people to go to the polls is connect with your NAACPs, your Urban League Young Professionals, the Congressional Black Caucus on Women and Girls. There are a number of organizations here that are doing electoral motivation work, and that's what's going to bring us out to the polls. We got to continue to talk about it, but we need to be taking caravans to early vote. That's what it's going to take.
I want to shout out an initiative that didn't get a lot of attention, but that had a huge impact on Andrew Gillum's race in Florida. It was called the Wakanda Agenda. Do you remember the Wakanda? So they had a hashtag Wakanda Agenda, and it was really great because it was a combination of social media, but also an agenda printed out. They could give to voters and say, this is our agenda. You vote for anybody who's for this stuff, and it's all the things that so I think those kind of marrying the old-fashioned door knocking and with social media is very smart, and it was very helpful to Andrew Gillum. Question. Your turn. Sorry. That was my build-up.
Foster care. A friend of mine's kids were taken from the school. They were in school, no problems in the home. Mother's a doctor, father's Microsoft. Took those kids and held them for a year. Just because they thought the father was a spy or something because he was out of interracial marriage. Her mother is dead. Her kids have been gone, her grandkids, her heart, been gone a year. Now she herself was put into jail and just got out. For Orange County is the culprit. Congressman from California, what's her name, Maxine, knows they've frozen her bank accounts.
So,
and the kids, what can I do? My kids are in a situation right here. You're talking about the immigrants.
Right. Let me get your question.
My question is, what can I do?
Sure.
When the state has your children and pushing you out. Hillary Clinton did a bill that said unlimited funds are given to children.
Okay.
And right now, we can't get to keep our families together.
Amen. Well,
okay.
Let me route your question to Elizabeth.
So what are you going to do about that?
Elizabeth, can you take that?
Sure, yes, I can respond. I think what Simone was saying earlier about getting face-to-face with people and what the young lady asked earlier about, helping, how can you all help us change policy, create change for Black women and Black people in our community? And that is that in-person engagement, that is getting involved with local organizations. One of the things we do at the Alliance is lift up community-based actors who are working to create change. And so link up with them. We have kindred partners all over the US, in Georgia, in New York, in California, Minnesota, other different places where they need your support, they need you to volunteer, they need you to donate, they need you to show up to events. And so get out and join us and have conversation. Have a conversation and get really specific, but the really specific change happens at the local and state level.
Oh, okay. All right, we're going to go lightning round now. Everybody make your questions super short because we are almost out of time. There's a long line. So make your questions super quick because we don't have much time.
Alrighty, my name is Zaire Patman. I'm a sophomore political science major from Washington, Pennsylvania, out of Howard University, the Howard University.
Okay.
My question is to Simone Sanders. You kind of answered this earlier in a way, but you didn't elaborate on it as much as I wanted you to. I'm very focused on youth, and I'm not a millennial. I think I'm the next generation after it.
You're a post-millennial.
There we go. But my question is, what collective actions should the youth of today be taking instead of identifying the problem? Because we can identify the problem all the time, but if we're not taking actions to make changes, then we're stagnant. So what action should we be taking?
So the best example I like to give for this is in the CNN green room here in DC, there are no energy drinks. There's Coca-Cola, there's all kinds of stuff, but there are no energy drinks. So if I want energy drinks in the CNN green room, because sometimes I'm there till 2 a.m., I need to, one, identify what it is that I want, then I need to build a coalition. And so I need to go, who do I go to? My other CNN political commentators, guests that come into the green room through the DC room on a regular basis and say, hey, do you mind, not do you care, because I don't care if you care, I care, I want to know if you mind.
Right.
Do you mind if we had energy drinks in the CNN green room? Right. No, great, can you sign on to I need you to join my coalition.
Absolutely.
And then I go and I get those people to ask 2 more people. And before you know it, I've got a 100-people coalition of people that have a vested interest that walk through the green room in the CNN Bureau every single day that would like energy drinks in the CNN green room. So now I got here's your hashtag. Can y'all tweet this out? Will you sign this letter here? And now we got a collective action. And then we're giving people directives. Then I go to the powers that be, Rebecca, who I'm sure she hopes I never do this. And I say, Rebecca, here's the signed letter of the coalition of we the people that come through the CNN green room that would like energy drinks in the CNN green room. Right. This is what we demand. Yeah. That is how you do it. So young people have put this into action all over the country. Wesley Bell in St. Louis, he now has Bob McCullough's job, the DA who declined to prosecute Michael Slater in the death of Michael Brown because young black people got together, activists, and organized by Bob and got him out.
Okay, we're gonna go to the next question. I can probably get 3 more in if you guys are super quick.
My name is Sharon Johnston Catchings. I want to thank you for this forum. It's great. How do we give others in our community to have courage instead of just complaining all the time, but actually take action and to have courage? Because recently I wrote a letter to President Trump. One of my good friends was in prison. So he asked NFL, who do you want to be released? So I said, okay, I don't play football, but
very quick.
I wrote a letter and he's being released. So I have another friend as well that is in prison from Howard, and I plan on writing another letter. The question is how to get our people to stop complaining. I've never complained about the president ever.
Okay, we're going to go to the next
action.
Okay, let's go. Anybody wants to take that question? Yes. So let me just say this. I'm sitting here, I'm not a politician, I'm not a policymaker, I'm not a professor, I'm not a strategist. I'm just a mom who is in pain and needed to connect with other people. I'm an introvert, I don't like talking to lots of people. And where I found courage was by unifying with other people who shared my same pain, who shared my same concerns, my same interests. These women who have joined with me to form this organization are who have given me the courage to use my voice. So whenever any of us feel weak, whenever any of us feel like we can't go on or don't know what to say, we get together and talk about it and figure it out together. And in unity, there's courage and there's strength. So I would suggest you find other people to join with. Thank you. We're going into overtime. Let's have the next person. Super quick question.
Right. Okay. Good morning. I'm going to make the question quick. Thank you for this panel. It's wonderful. We haven't really talked about redistricting at all. Also, by the way, my name is Adrienne Johnson. Yep. London, native Washingtonian. So I'm visiting my family. We haven't spoken about redistricting, and I think for all the young people.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I believe Simone has to go. Yeah. Simone has to go. Everybody, please give Simone Sanders a big round of applause. We'll see you on CNN. Nice Sneak Watch. Thank you, Simone. Thank you very much. Okay, continue your question.
I can do it.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's really important.
On redistricting, let's have Congressman.
So redistricting, for those who don't know.
Let's have Stacey take it. Go for it.
Yes, redistricting, for those who don't know, is how we decide who gets elected as your state legislator, your congressional member, but it's also how they decide your school board member, your county commissioner, your city council members. Elect governors who will vote for the right maps and vote all the way down the ballot, vote for every legislator. That's how they take power. This year is the year that most of the legislatures will be elected that will decide who controls Congress, but also who controls your school board, who controls your city council, who controls your county commission, and who controls the census Yes. Because if we don't solve it in 2018, they will draw a census map that doesn't include most of us.
Right. Can we just repeat? I know we don't have time, but can you repeat that? Who decides what the district boundary lines are?
District boundary lines are decided by your state legislature, your state house, your state senate, and your governor.
Right.
So I am the only person, I'm one of a handful of governors when I become elected who can veto maps if I don't like them.
That's right.
And so it's not just about who can vote for them, it's who can say no to them. So vote all the way down the ballot. Do not stop at the top. Vote for Andrew Gillum and go all the way to the bottom to the very last line.
I like that.
And know who your state legislature is. There's a thing. There are Google. You can go on Google and you can put in your zip code, and there are sites that will tell you who all your representatives are. Know who your state reps are and your state senators. People undercount how important that is. Yes. They decide, including Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman's district. It's drawn by the state. So vote for your state reps.
Communicate to them and communicate.
And communicate
to those
with
state
them.
legislators what you expect.
Elected officials, you both can attest, are very sensitive to a whole bunch of emails.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Or a whole bunch of letters. Okay, do we have anybody else in line? I think we might have gone through the line.
We're done.
We did it. We did a great job. Okay, so wait. One person is running. Last person. Last call.
Well, since you asked,
yes.
She told me no, but she said, my name is Ruth Benson.
More. We're only going to do one more. Go ahead. Go for it. Okay, 2 more. That's it.
I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Stacey. My question is unity. How do we find it? We have so many organizations. I'm with an organization called Blacks in Government. Bonnie Watson, I reached out to you a few times. I'm still trying.
We're in overtime.
Okay.
We're in overtime.
Unity, how do we find it?
Question, anybody want to take it? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I think it's a function of our pain and our recognition that a lot of us are working in similar space, and we need to identify that and at some point have inter-organizational conversations so that they know that we are about these sort of core issues. This is where we're going to hold you accountable.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I wanted to just say that we talked a lot about getting connected, linking up with like-minded people. Black Mamas Matter Alliance is an umbrella organization. We coordinate like-minded groups who are working to advance Black maternal health, who care about Black mamas, who care about Black women's health. And this December, we're organizing the first national conference for Black maternal health in Atlanta, Georgia. And so that's a great opportunity for people to connect, to share information, to learn from each other, to share best practices, but also to grow their network. So that applies to people who are in maternal health, but also, link up with a coordinating entity in whatever area that you're trying to.
We're about to lose our panel. I'll say one other way you can get unity. When they try to boycott Serena's matches, you can respond, right? You can have a response to that, because apparently the umpires want to boycott her. Okay, go for it.
Thank you so much. My name is Rochelle Alalaye. I'm from the great city of Chicago. I live in Indianapolis right now, and I'm on the school board in Indianapolis.
Yes,
we talk so much about how important it is to vote. Can we talk about how important it is to bring our voices to the table and to run for offices?
Okay.
Little ones and big ones.
And we're going to end that with our 2 young ladies who have run for offices. So we'll start with you, Congresswoman.
Okay, we have a responsibility to stand up and run for every office that we can. School board's really important. Little black girls get suspended 5 times more than white girls for the same type of activity. That starts formulating who they are, how they see themselves, and where they end up. So we need to ensure that other folks see it important enough to run for office, from school board on up to governor, and maybe president.
We just saw 2 potential presidents of the United States earlier in Senators Booker and Harris. So remember, anyone can win if you vote for them. I'm going to end this with a lightning round. I'm going to ask each of our panelists in succession before we wrap up. What, in your view, is the single most important issue that should drive people to the polls in less than 50 days? Most important issue, Congresswoman?
Trump.
Stacey Abrams.
The future of our nation. Here's what I would say, very, very quickly.
Very succinct. Monica Turner.
That was your thing. But what I would say is we really do have to come together as a coalition to fight for the equality we want to see. So vote for it at the polls.
Elizabeth.
Elect Black women who will prioritize issues that concern our community.
Okay, and DePelshaw.
Racism and white backlash, fighting for the future of our country.
All right, I want to thank, can we give an incredible round of applause to this entire panel. First of all, to Sabrina Fulton for being with us, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who had to go back to the Hill, Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, ranking member, meaning she could be the chair of the Transportation Security Committee, Stacey Abrams. I think she was elected governor of Georgia, actually, after the forum. So, but you still have to vote to make it
Right.
official,
You have to
okay?
vote.
This was not the election. Monica Turner, Vice President of Selling and Operations at Procter & Gamble. Thank you also for being a sponsor. We appreciate Procter & Gamble. Simone Sanders, who had to go, catch her on CNN. Elizabeth Dawes-Gay, co-director of Black Mamas Matter Alliance. And DePelsha Magruder, founder and president of Moms of Black Boys United. Thank you all for being here. You've been an amazing audience. God bless you and have a great day.